Hey, hi everyone, and welcome back. Hope you had a good break. I am very excited to welcome Bobbie Carlton. Bobbie's such a catalyst to connect people, whether through Innovation Women, through her PR firm. Bobbie, TEDx talk. I have to know more about that the next time. Thank you, Kristen, and thank you, Marianne. So take it away, Bobbie. I'm looking forward to this.
Great. Thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate the invitation to come and actually bring some people with me. So a little bit about Innovation Women. We are an online, what I call visibility bureau. The idea is to provide speakers access to events and conferences and to be seen as experts. Journalists use our platform, and we make it super easy for event managers as well. They can search our database for free and connect directly with speakers. We're not like a traditional speakers bureau. And as you probably guessed by the name of the platform, Innovation Women, we primarily represent women. We have about 2,000 speakers, of whom most of them are women, and we have what I say are 5 really secure guys who have also joined the platform. So why are we here today? As speakers, obviously, we are integral to events, and we provide knowledge and expertise and also entertainment. So, we are really, I think, a big part of the events industry. And like the events industry, a lot of speakers have seen things change for them practically overnight. So what I did today is I brought 2 speakers with me who can speak to not only speaking and the business of speaking, but also to transitions and changes. So I think I'm going to start things off by letting them introduce themselves because they can do it far better than I can. So shift things over to Kristen.
Hi, everyone. So nice to be here with you today and excited to talk about this work that we're all trying to figure out as we get through this COVID experience. I work as a leadership coach, life and leadership coach. I am speaker, and my primary work is going to events, mostly in person up to this point, but of course you won't be surprised to hear that's been changing, and provide leadership training for teams, and then most typically some one-on-one coaching with members of those teams. And really the area that I focus on in particular is mindful leadership and building leadership resilience. So that tends to have 2 sides of a coin. One is your own personal resilience, your own personal mindfulness and stress reduction practices. And then once you've been able to get a handle on those, how do you translate that to leading a team and kind of bringing that into business practices as well, that it's not something that has to be kept only in the personal realm. And those are the themes that I resonate with. So this time of the great pause, as I'm hearing it called, are definitely tapping into those kinds of needs right now.
Great. Thank you so much. And now, Marianne, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So ironically, my company helps organizations launch remote work programs and enables virtual team productivity and collaboration over distance. And so, as you can well imagine, while I have an organizational development and change management and learning and development background, I'd been doing a lot of speaking on different ways that dispersed teams were getting together and how they were connecting and how they were collaborating. And now what I've been doing is crisis management with every person in my network who is calling me up saying, I don't know how to do this. Can you help me think about it? Can you help me really leverage these things? And so right at this particular moment, we are working with everything from the travel industry to hospitality to sales to retail to healthcare and lots of other industries who find themselves in a pretty unprecedented circumstance. So we are literally doing crisis coaching with all sorts of people today.
Great. Thank you so much. Now, both of you had active speaking, training, and workshop careers before the great COVID crisis. I love the great pause, though. I had literally hadn't heard that one before. That's a great description. It's the way I feel right now. But tell us a little bit about what's changed for you and kind of how you're handling this sea change. Kristen, let's start with you again.
Sure. Well, I'm actually finding it to be the perfect opportunity, ironically, to really kind of settle in to my own bubble and do some of that. It's interesting, just coming off of the conversation about ideation and brainstorming, because I really found that the early portion of the pandemic, I really needed to start doing that for myself. Kind of where did I want to go with my work? And how could I redefine myself so that I could continue the work that I love, knowing that, you know, it could be 6, 9 months, 12 months before people are bringing, you know, groups back into a room to hear me speak. So how do I manage that? So it's probably obvious to hear that I've been doing a lot of work to shift onto online presentations. I'm in the midst of creating an online course, because what I also really realized is that people need the access to the information, not just when I'm ready to be on Zoom, but they might also need it at an entirely different time. And if I can create that virtual product that they can access at their own time zone, their own need, if they're awake at 2 o'clock in the morning and for some reason that's a good time for them to click on my material, then, you know, so that's been the biggest shift and quite frankly, I think it was a little kick in the behind that I needed, because I was not doing as much virtual as I might have been able to be doing previously anyways. But really kind of coming back to center and saying, regardless of what form it takes, what is the heart of what I want to deliver? What is really the true value of what I do? And by identifying that, I've been able to get more clear about different ways to do that. So it made me recenter on my values and my value, so that now I can figure out what form it's going to take. So it's been actually a really helpful reflection process. Even though it's been forced, it's been good.
Great. Okay. And Marianne, I actually have been able to participate in some of your activities. Tell us a little bit about those.
Right. For the last 10 weeks, we've actually been doing executive briefings every Friday to really give people heads up of some of the trends and some of the things that they should be keeping ahead of. And we were very fortunate because we had been talking with very large organizations and have healthcare clients and things like this. So 12 weeks ago, 14 weeks ago, we saw the writing on the wall. So we had already started to contact clients and share that information with people to prep them. 10 weeks ago, we started executive briefings where we started to have conversations with folks to just give them a heads up, to let them know what was going on. And I very much appreciate not only, all of our other speakers who have talked about, what can you control right now? What can't you control right now? And what are your values and your responsibilities? We have made very conscious choices while we still have paid work. We've also made some very conscious choices to use our expertise and our skill as a give back at this moment in time, because we are in a circumstance where we have information, we have background, we have expertise in these areas. And so we've been helping people to think about stuff. I mean, we work with the construction trade, we work with manufacturing, and these aren't traditional work from home, remote work circumstances. And so we're using this as an opportunity, first of all, to help where we can, to help people to reimagine things. And this actually is coming from my background, which is, in 2008, I was a senior executive in an organization, and I was working on projects where I was helping people to collaborate over distance. And I was in a very different circumstance, and then the economy changed. And in 2009, I found myself in transition, never thinking I would be self-employed, never thinking I would start a company, never thinking that I would use crazy skills, and suddenly finding myself in that place. And what I've noticed most of all right now is, Diane, you said it, we're making fun of I was making fun of bubble pods, but shift of perspective. I've spent a lot of time educating people about the value of the virtual experience. I don't think it's a substitute. Face-to-face is one way of interacting, but I think that it's a valuable experience. And so I don't have to educate people on the fact that it's necessary. I just have to now really get people to an awareness point where they're understanding that virtual interactions, virtual experience can have their own value proposition. And the more that you can integrate them into your strategy for your business, then the more resilience you're going to have, and also the better business continuity you're going to have.
Great. Thank you both. I'm going to actually kind of answer the question that I asked. I always love doing that. As innovation women, we saw the writing on the wall, because my other business, as Diane mentioned, is I run a PR firm, and my clients were passengers on the Diamond Princess. And so I spent most of February doing public relations for people who were in quarantine in Yokohama Harbor. And so, that was an incredible experience, but it's really pointed out to us where the industry was going to have some issues very, very quickly. And so as our partners, the event managers, had three choices: cancel, postpone, or virtual. And so what we're seeing right now is a huge amount of virtual. It's virtual summits, it's online events and conferences. Some of these are what we call fast pivots, and some of them are a little bit more considered and giving people a little bit more time to think through a lot of the options in the events world. So we're seeing more interactive events. We're seeing lots of games and workshops and ways that people interact. It's the folks that have figured out, how they can get everybody to participate by holding up a sign when you're looking at a sea of Zoom faces, to make things a little bit different. And so, we're seeing people who are putting their noses to the grindstone and, coming up with incredibly inventive and interesting virtual events, and they're doing it super fast. So we will see people come into our platform and swoop down and pick up 5, 10, 15 speakers all of a sudden, and they are doing something very quickly. Marianne, let's go back to you real quickly. Can you tell people a little bit more about kind of the thought process behind some of these pivots and transitions from a business point of view?
Sure. I think that, one of the things that our speakers said earlier, right at this particular point in time, is that movement, momentum is going to be really, really important, and showing visibility, letting people know that you're still available. And in addition, there's a lot of emphasis in this morning's talk about staying in touch, but staying in touch in a human way. and I think that this is actually a part of the pivot that I think is amazing and wonderful, because when you're working at scale and whether you're running a big event or whether you're trying to do something within any industry, then if the starting premise is, if we're not doing it face to face, then it doesn't have value, is a non-starter in today's environment. And so how do you take what Brian was talking about earlier and start with the premise, virtual can have value, that connecting digitally not only can have value, but could bring novel and interesting experiences that haven't been explored yet. So the people who are taking that first mover advantage and getting things on board very, very quickly, to Bobbie's point, and because it's first mover advantage, here's the thing, folks, people can be more experimental in these forums, and people are more forgiving. The people who are participants are much more forgiving because everybody is feeling a little uncomfortable. And so if you can, put yourself out there and take that risk and go into these environments and rethink, use some of the techniques that both Brian and Diane are talking about to reimagine this particular event opportunity, this particular travel opportunity. And I think we've seen it with people creating their own content from different parts of the world. I think we've seen it in relation to different ways that people are coming together. I myself have formed a partnership with the Microsoft Teams group and have been doing almost instant events because we were going to do a live event, and it was pretty quickly apparent that wasn't going to be the right way to do it. So we said, well, we've got Teams platform, we might as well play with it. And we might
Can I interrupt here, Bobbie and Marianne? And I'd like to bring Jim in on this, because this is just such a perfect moment for him to chime in here, because we've been, I've just participated in a couple over these past few weeks, but just as you're all, Marianne, you're pointing out, Bobbie, you're pointing out, there's room for error right now, even though there's no, there's no mistakes, there's no failure, because even the production companies themselves, they're catching up to what the needs and the demands are in this new space. Jim, are you? Yeah.
There's a battle there, and the battle is that the hotels and the old traditional facilities are looking to see how they can capture what production companies had done and build it in. I personally, I think it's actually a little bit of a mistake on their part, because what you need are companies that know how to do a production and don't just have a couple of pieces of equipment that can accommodate it. So I think it's a fascinating time when it really comes down to what's happening with production. What we're doing right here, which we found out that with a very low cost approach, we're able to do it as well as many of the companies who've been doing it professionally. So, again, to me, the technology is a cool conversation, but the content has to come first. And I think that's it.
Well, I was just going to jump in and say one thing. I think Jim's right. I think what's going to end up happening is that, if you're old school and you're trying to retrofit old models to the new format, you're going to fail. And that's a problem. And I've seen it happen all over the place. If you're doing learning events, an online learning event has to be designed differently. If you're going to do an online event, you have to, there are obviously going to be some transitions, but you have to approach it differently, and you have to actually look at the context. So Diane, this is actually something that I totally appreciate about what you're doing here, because while Diane is bringing, Diane and her team are bringing their experience, of running events and the logistics and the sensitivity towards everything from needing a break to how do you get people in small chat conversations, and they're experimenting with all of those things. This doesn't feel like they're trying to replicate the in-person experience entirely. And so I think that's probably why you're having some success.
Well, thank you, Marianne. And actually I say this, and Jim is going to laugh, but we have 2 or 3 virtual platforms right now who are building as we speak, because the way that I want to produce this doesn't exist yet. So in a turnkey, and that's very exciting to me. So yes. So anyway, let's get back to you because I'm really enjoying this. Thank you so much for your expertise, for all of you. Yep.
Yeah, I'll actually just chime in quickly on the whole aspect of virtual events. I went looking immediately for platforms. At the same time, we already had various platforms that we used. We had been doing a bi-weekly webinar for Innovation Women speakers, oh gosh, 2.5, 3 years. And, just to roll it back to that conversation about there is an appetite and an okayness with some level of technical issues. We had been doing these webinars now for like over 2 years, and all of a sudden 2 weeks ago, we had a speaker whose audio was hijacked when her husband drove their car past the office that she was working out of. And literally the Bluetooth picked up her phone, hijacked the audio, and we ended up on, complete silence for a matter of minutes. So I wrote about that in our weekly newsletter, and so many people came back to me saying, thank you for letting us know that these things happen. And I think it's the attitude around we're all going through this at the same time, that there is such a forgiveness and a comfort with a certain level of issues. Now, that doesn't mean, go at it haphazardly. You can definitely see the difference between a conference that has had a rehearsal and one that has not. On that note, I'm going to actually turn things back to Kristen, because I think one of the things that she does so well is really talk about stress and how to manage that. And, these transitional things are stressful for each and every one of us. Kristen?
Yeah, it's great that you kind of had that sense to pivot back to me, because just as you were saying that, I felt the desire to chime in, because I think that the observation that we're all having and that you're making about kind of the imperfection of trying to quickly pivot and get onto these kind of platforms without every single detail completely ironed out is ironically, I think, a strength right now, because in addition to connecting for business reasons and content reasons and all of the reasons why we're having these meetings and these events, what we all really need, regardless of industry right now, is that we need to feel connected as people. We can't lose that sense of humanity that we have, right? That we would usually feel in a different kind of way when we're sitting in the same room as someone. And so I think that those little production foibles and technology glitches are a way of reminding us all that, we're not all turning into artificial intelligence. We are still people. Real things still happen. And it's actually a leadership tool that I talk about a lot, which is, we don't want to look at each other and think everybody else is so perfect that I can't possibly bring myself to that space, because I'm not, I don't know every single technology. I don't have myself completely perfected. And so by owning that, we really open the space to more people who might otherwise not feel ready to join. So I think there's going to be a lot of people who 6 months ago would never have thought that they could join the virtual world because they weren't ready, they didn't have the tech savvy, they don't have the experience, who now are like, oh, I guess it's okay if someone's audio gets hijacked for 30 seconds, people will wait for you. And that sense of understanding and being forgiving to ourselves, one of the strategies that can be applied personally, and that I think we're really talking about applying to our businesses, whatever they are, is the idea of making the invisible visible. right? And we're so used to working in a particular way that we often don't think about, why have we chosen to do it that way? What are the reasons that I've chosen to use this or that kind of format? And so we're being forced to ask ourselves those questions about how we deliver whatever our business proposition is. And then I'm asking people, on that personal level, as you do that, also look at yourself. Where have we moved into automatic pilot and maybe need to start thinking differently about our own sets of patterns and behaviors, and why do we do what we do, and where is that coming from? So I think this has been a jolt to all of us to look at ourselves personally and figure that out, and then also look at our businesses and say, what really matters? How can I accomplish it? What might be that new and outrageous idea that I can think about now that I wasn't ready to think about before? And in the midst of all of that, we're all just people together trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And we don't need to hide that from each other, right? In fact, we make better connections and people feel more interested if they can relate to us.
Okay, Kristen, you want to hear this? Bobbie, I have to share this. I'm biting at the bit. So it took me like all this time to, I do videos and daily videos and inspiration, whatever. But I did one video, sans makeup, sans this, whatever it was. And that was the video I had the greatest hits on.
Yep.
I got close to 1,500 hits. So now 1,500 people are talking about Diane without makeup on. And you know what? It's okay.
Right.
Because it's okay. But just because we have a few minutes left, 3 minutes left to this, I just want to go back to this, Bobbie, and everybody, is one of the reasons, the key reasons that I wanted to do this session, this segment, and I'm so happy that you joined in, is to bring the awareness of how speakers are experts in areas to help us through this transition, through this bridge we're on. And we're allowed to laugh. So if you have a humorist, bring her on. If you have someone to educate you. So what is your thoughts, Bobbie, on that? Just in the couple of minutes we have left, is how, Kristen, Marianne, perfect, absolutely brilliant with how they shared their expertise and happening now. What other thoughts can you leave us with in the next couple minutes?
It's very interesting. One of my board members for Innovation Women is actually a stand-up comic. She's also a rather unique stand-up comic in that she was a venture capitalist and her primary audience is venture capital. You're talking about a stand-up comic who targets investors. Like, how absolutely focused is that? I am continually amazed at, just the expertise. I at one point was requested by an event manager to provide a speaker who was the female founder of a cybersecurity company who could talk about bug bounties. I don't know if you know what a bug bounty is, but it's when you pay developers to go and find bugs in your software. This is so detailed. And I was very impressed that I was actually able to find 2 speakers. So I think there's a sense of right now, the limits are off. The gloves are off. You can find exactly what you want out there in the speaker world. There are people who can help you convey almost any message, almost any type of experience or feeling even. And so I would invite all of you to think about, now is your opportunity to kind of, wad up your preset expectations and bring out, the crazy, bring out the outrageous. What is it you exactly want?
And
this
Bobbie,
is the time to do it.
Yeah, and Bobbie, I think that's what today obviously was all about, to focus on is, and Kristen brought this out too, and Marianne, are the choices we have now. So there's no substitute for face-to-face, but face-to-face has almost increased in meaning now that we have choices. Virtual might be it is acceptable now because we've been given permission to use it as a time when we can't meet face-to-face. But it also, I was just writing when you were all talking, is it actually might increase profitability down the road because, for example, what if I can physically attend, what if I'm an association member, for example, and I can physically attend one association meeting, but I don't want to miss out on another? Well, maybe I have to pay to have that virtual experience by listening to that speaker. So all sorts of things, I think, regardless of what industry you're in, and the speakers represent a cross section of them all.
And I
Lots.
think, Diane, I think
Yes.
the other thing that you have said that's really important for people to remember is that we live in a multi-channel communication world now, which means these are extenders. And these extenders, the face-to-face experience is wonderful, but digital has been around for a long time, and really smart people have used it to extend the depth of a relationship, to extend an interaction, extend an experience, extend a conversation, extend a connection. And I think many of the people who have talked today have talked about the importance of getting yourself out there and hearing new ideas. And when you talk about what's the value of experts, if the expert has been looking at different trends across different industries, then suddenly they get to help you to imagine ways that somebody from another industry is taking a particular technique and retrofitting it, and how does that fit in the particular place you're in? Because all of us live inside our worlds, and if we continue to have conversations outside our worlds, then those connections that we have that will introduce us to new ways of doing things can then be retrofitted, so we don't have to think of everything from scratch. We don't have to be complete inventors, but maybe what we're doing is we're taking ideas from all over the place, and we're melding it into what happens next in our space.
Yeah, no, I listen, I love this. I love this, right, taking copious notes here, the great pause and the extenders. Now there's something that we're all going to be using in our day-to-day. There's no question. I love this, that it's no substitute, but we're now putting a definition on it. That's right. I think, all right, Bobbie, when you say that as we're wrapping up here, huh?
Absolutely. Thank you again so much for having us.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions before we move on? And I'm going to say this to everybody. Our closure today is a fairly unique one, and I invite you all to hang around because it promises to do a lot of what the speakers were talking about, which is engagement in a very creative way.